What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix. I'm Ryan Coop here with your final depth chart update for Week 16 of the 2021 season. The final depth chart of the season as a whole. The final week is here and the final games are here before we get into playoff mode. Quick note on the playoffs, I will have fantasy content throughout each round of the playoffs as well. You can get in and play some more CFL Fantasy the rest of the way, including all the way up to the Grey Cup there also. Make sure you check out my Friday night depth chart updates I released earlier today if you're watching this before the Friday night games. And if you need any more help, I also have positional previews out for each position earlier this week to help get you all set for locking in the rest of your lineups. 2 games on Saturday this week. The Hamilton Tiger Cats and Saskatchewan Roughriders, and then closing it out with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Calgary Stampeders. Let's go through the depth charts, touch on the fantasy notables among all of them, and start off with that game for Hamilton and Saskatchewan. The Riders don't have anything to play for in this one, will be resting a bunch of starters, whereas the Ticats are trying to lock up that home playoff game in second place in the East Division. So Hamilton will be going with pretty much their usual starting lineup. Don Jackson returns after missing last game due to injury. He will be the starting running back this week. Other notable change, Poppy White getting back onto the active roster for the first time in quite some time. Will be the primary kick returner for the week and a backup to Brandon Banks at receiver. Jeremiah Mazzoli starts at quarterback with Dane Evans the backup, as we've seen in the latter half of the season. Crowded room at running back, Don Jackson, Sean Thomas Erlington, Malik Irons, and Jackson Bennett. Expect Don Jackson to get the bulk of the carries in this one, I would assume. The only caveat, the only asterisk there is they play Saturday, Montreal plays Friday. If Montreal loses that game, Hamilton has second place locked up. So there could be a scenario where they shorten the workload on Jackson to leave him ready for the playoffs. So be a bit cautious there. At receiver, it's the usual crew: Stephen Dunbar Jr., Jalen Acklin, Brandon Banks, Tim White, David Unger III are your starters. As I mentioned, Poppy White's backup, and same with Tyler Ternowski as well. Still no Braylon Addison in the lineup for Hamilton. Defensive side of the ball, for the most part, the same starters as the last week as they try to lock up that home playoff game. And they'll be facing a Riders team that is resting the majority of their starters in this game. On offense, no Cody Fajardo, no William Powell, and no Duke Williams. Lots of starters across the board resting on the defensive side of the ball as well. Some of the biggest names there will be getting a rest this week. But offensively, will be Isaac Harker starting as the starting quarterback. Mason Fine is the backup. Cody Fajardo not on the roster. He gets a rest this week. At running back, Jamal Morrow, who's primarily done return duties this season, will get the start at the running back position with Keenan LaFrance as the backup. And to replace Duke Williams at receiver, Justin McInnes comes in and gets a start there. They'll be lining up with Shaq Evans, Ricardo Lewis, Braden Lenius, Justin McInnes, and Keon Schaefer-Baker as their starters at receiver. And as backups, Mitchell Picton, Jake Hardy, and Rashard Davis, who comes back onto the roster to presumably handle the kick return duties, as he did in a couple of games in between stints for Jamal Morrow. So Rashard Davis to handle returns, Morrow gets the start at running back, and Harker gets the start at quarterback. As I mentioned, a number of notables out on defense. No Micah Tights, no Luchas Purifoy, no Dion Lacey, just to name a couple of guys there. In the second game on Saturday, Winnipeg and Calgary, the Bombers rested most of their starters last week against Montreal. This week, they bring a couple of them back. Most of the starters are back on the defensive side of the ball. Some of them are back on offense, while some get another break. Zach Collaros is listed as the starting quarterback this week. They have 3 quarterbacks dressed. Collaros, Sean McGuire, who started last week, has missed practice this week due to injury, and Drew Brown. Collaros starts. I would assume he's not going to play the whole game. I hope he doesn't play the whole game. So I would be cautious in taking Collaros because I don't think he plays a full 4 quarters. At running back, Brady Oliveira gets a week off this week, and Johnny Augustine will start at that position. Shaq Cooper is the backup. Maybe he gets some reps there. At wide receiver, Darvin Adams is also getting a rest this week. Probably the go-to veteran there, I would say. The most veteran receiver in this offense for sure. Does get the break this week. Kelvin McKnight takes his spot and will go in at slot back. And there's a bit of shuffling around there for the Bombers at the receiver position. They will go with Kenny Lawler, Kelvin McKnight, Nick Dembski, Rasheed Bailey, and Drew Wolotarski as their starters. The only backup listed is O'Leary Orange, who's been the backup behind Wolotarski for the past number of weeks. So I would say it's safe to say, the starting receivers are going to be playing the whole game, but little asterisk cautiousness on there that it probably won't be with MOP candidate Zach Collaros at quarterback the whole way. Janarian Grant gets a week off in the return game once again. Shaq Cooper gets another try. Hopefully we see him have a better game than he did last week. Had a bit of the case of the dropsies in that game, and they're giving him another chance to right the ship, so to say, in that category this week. So backup running back and will be handling returns. Offensive side of the ball, we get our offensive line. Stanley Bryant comes back in after missing his first game in a Bomber uniform after they sat him last week. The full usual offensive line is there. Defensive side of the ball, most guys in there as well. Only notable that immediately jumps out is no Jackson Jeffcoat, who gets another week off this week. Very well deserved, I should say. So some changes there for the Bombers this week. As for the Calgary Stampeders, they are playing most of their starters as well. They do have a couple guys getting a rest on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side, it is mostly starters there. With the two notables being Kadeem Carey is out this week. He will not play. He gets a rest while Rock Thomas comes in and takes over the starting role at running back. Ante Milanovic-Litre is the backup. I would expect both of them to get their share of reps in this game. Thomas did come in for a game or two earlier this year, returned a big touchdown off a kickoff there. So he's an explosive player. I'm excited to see what he does in a starting running back role. Bo Levi Mitchell starts at quarterback. Jake Mayer is the backup. I wonder if we see a time split between these two guys in this game as well. At receiver, the other notable change is no Malik Henry this week. He gets some reps in at receiver, handles return duties most weeks. He is out. Sean Bain is in and will presumably be handling returns. Can't confirm since it's not listed on the depth chart, but he is typically, when he's in the lineup and Henry is not, the guy handling that role. In total at receiver, they're going to go with the usual starters in Reggie Bagleton, Markeith Ambles, Kamar Jordan, Richie Sindani, and Herji Mayala. We also have, I mentioned Sean Bain's a backup, Colton Hunchak's a backup, Tyson Middlemost's a backup, and Luther Hakunavanu is a third string there as well. And knowing Calgary, we could see each of these guys potentially getting in for some reps in this game for the Stampeders. So those are your depth charts for the final week of the regular season. Make sure you get those lineups locked in. 6:30 p.m. is when the game start on Friday night. 3 p.m. is when the two games on Saturday kick off, the first one of the two, I should say. And get those lineups locked in. I hope it's a great week of CFL Fantasy for you. I hope we see you at the top of the leaderboard once everything has settled. And stay tuned for the playoffs and all the related content with that as well. I'll be back next week. Probably a little later on in the week because the games aren't till Sunday. So it will. We'll want to wait and see, what the practice week looks like a little bit before starting to talk about the options for the playoff games. So stay tuned for all of the usual content throughout the playoffs as well. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. Link to that's in the description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, there is a link in the description as well to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play with us this week and throughout the rest of the playoffs as well. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.